All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about a really tough problem. How do you actually manage the risk of using AI systems in places like pharma or manufacturing, where the rules are incredibly strict? We're going to tackle this using a framework called the Lifecycle Lens, and we're going to focus on the most dangerous moments, those transitions between phases.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? The real danger isn't when a system is humming along in a phase you understand. No, the danger is in that quiet shift from one phase to the next, where all your assumptions about risk and control might be totally wrong. And that's exactly the problem we're here to unpack today.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll hammer home why AI has to be treated as a system. Then, we'll walk through the easygoing early phases before we really zero in on that critical authority shift. From there, we'll look at the really high-stakes later phases and then bring it all home with the main idea, matching the right controls to the right phase. That's our goal.
Okay, let's start with the most foundational idea. If you're going to use the lifecycle lens, you have to stop thinking about AI as just a cool new tool. In regulated spaces, you have to treat it as a system, with all the seriousness that word implies.
So what are we really saying when we use the word system here? It means we're in a world where getting the right answer isn't enough. You have to be able to prove how you got it. Correctness, being able to trace every piece of data, and knowing who's accountable. These are not optional extras. They are the price of entry. And that distinction is everything.
Now, let's see how this all starts, beginning with the first couple of phases, P1 and P2. We call these the assistive phases. And honestly, most teams handle this first transition just fine, because the AI is still very clearly just helping out.
The move here is from asking one-off questions, that's phase 1, to building standardized, repeatable dashboards. You know, things that give people ongoing visibility into what's happening. Think of it as going from a random search to a trusted daily report.
And you can see how practical this is. In a discovery lab, a simple question like, hey, what's up with this experiment's metadata, becomes a standard status view across every single study. In a quality control lab, asking about deviations turns into a live dashboard showing all the open investigations. Same for manufacturing. Random questions about equipment become a formal view of downtime. The system is still just helping, but you can feel things starting to get a little more formal.
And that brings us to the most important part of this whole conversation, the authority shift. This is that move from phase 2 into phase 4, where the system's role fundamentally changes and risk starts to creep in, usually without anyone even noticing.
So, where does it all go wrong? It's right here. It's when a team thinks they're still just building a helpful dashboard, but they've actually crossed a critical line into shaping decisions. They totally misjudge the risk because the change feels so small and gradual.
So let's look at the full lifecycle lens diagram. We just talked about P1 and P2, the assistive stuff, but the danger zone we're focused on right now is this jump into P3 and P4. This is where a system stops just showing you what happened and starts suggesting how you should reorder the lab's work queue or making recommendations that directly influence a batch release.
Let's break it down. In phase 2, the system is just a rearview mirror. It tells you what has happened. The human is 100% in charge. But in phase 3, the system starts recommending what should happen. And here's the psychological trap. People naturally start to anchor on what the computer tells them. The system is now shaping their decision, even if there's no automation. It is no longer just assistive.
Then you take the next step, into phase 4, and it's another huge leap. This is the moment your AI system stops just being an idea on a screen. Its outputs are now actually reaching out and touching your official governed systems, your systems of record.
And what's the bottom line here? The second you touch a system of record, the game completely changes. In a regulated world, this is the line in the sand. This is where audit consequences become very, very real.
And what do those consequences mean for you? They mean new rules. You absolutely must have mandatory evidence and audit trails for everything the system does. You have to build in explicit approval gates where a human has to sign off. And you better have a tested, defined plan for how to roll back anything the system does. These are not suggestions.
And look, this isn't just some abstract concept. Check out this architecture diagram for a system that connects IT and operational technology. See that layer at the very bottom, the evidence and audit plane? That's where all this stuff lives. It's not bolted on at the end. It is an engineered, fundamental part of the system's foundation.
Now, once you're past phase 4, the stakes just keep getting higher. In these later phases, the blast radius, the potential damage if something goes wrong, it just gets bigger and bigger as the systems get more connected and more autonomous. So in phase 5, systems start making decisions based on other systems' outputs. It's a domino effect. A fault in one place can cascade everywhere. By phase 6, you're literally turning unwritten rules into code, which means your change control process has to be rock solid. And finally, phase 7. That's the deep end. We're talking direct physical consequences, which requires the absolute highest level of caution and governance you can imagine.
Okay, so after all this talk about risk, you might be thinking, what's the actual goal of using this lens? Well, it boils down to one simple but really powerful idea. You need to apply the right level of control for the phase your system is actually in, not the one you wish it was in.
All right, let's nail down the key takeaways. First, and this is so important, this is a classification tool, not a maturity model. Moving to a later phase does not mean you're better. In fact, it's usually just riskier. The goal is to figure out where your project really fits, design controls that match how much power you've given the system, and remember that often the smartest move is to stop at an earlier phase and just do it perfectly.
Now, before we finish up, it's really important that we're crystal clear on what this explainer is and what it isn't. Think of this framework as a powerful guide, but not as a blank check.
What we've given you today are real-world examples to help you classify your projects and a framework to get you ready for audits and real-world operations. What we are absolutely not doing is authorizing or recommending you go out and automate anything, and we're not defining your specific validation procedures. That's on you. That's your responsibility.
So I want to leave you with this one question to take back to your own projects. Ask yourself, is our system just informing a human, or has it quietly crossed the line and started shaping their decision? Answering that question honestly is the most important first step you can take. Thanks for joining me.